Hi guys, Ray here with my day 3 check-in. Happy 4th of July, by the way. So this is the first day of the 7-day dry fast. No food, no water. And I feel pretty good. This morning I woke up, did my regular meditation, my special pranic opening meditation, and gave myself a breathwork session. And then I did 5 Tibetan rites, and then took a shower and went for a walk. Later on, I did some client work by Zoom, actually Skype. Um, do 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 bloop, bloop. I kind of missed that little tune. Um, did a Monday Sangha for the Patreon people today. Um, and so it's been kind of a busy day. But I'm not feeling any like detoxification side effects or anything like that. Okay, so part of the backstory that I said I was going to get into bit by bit, piece by piece over the course of these videos is to talk about like why I'm doing this, how I got onto this breatharian, food-free lifestyle in the first place, and to talk about the first time I tried the 21-day process, which was not actually the first time that I went for a long period of time without eating. Most of my eating things, I they just sort of happen. I don't really set out to do something. For example, the way I became a vegetarian is that one day I just suddenly became unable to eat meat. I didn't, you know, read about the horrors of factory farming or think about you shouldn't be eating animals. I was raised as a meat eater on this sad diet, the standard American diet. My parents were always talking about how you had to have meat in order to have the protein and the amino acids, or else you were gonna, get sick and die. And so even after I was on my own, left home, grew up, went to, you know, uh, I continued to eat meat until one day I went to get a hamburger and I went to eat it and it was absolutely tasteless. And there was nothing wrong with the hamburger. Perfectly fine hamburger, a cheeseburger actually that any other time I would have loved. But it was all I could do to force myself to eat it. And then for 3 days it just sat in my stomach and would not digest. And I kept trying, and eventually I gave up. I realized I can no longer eat meat. So that's how I became a vegetarian. The ability to eat meat just went away. It turns out, like if you look at the Eat Right for Your Blood Type guide, when I wound up running the Rebirth International Center for Leonard Orr in New York, the guy that wrote that book is a doctor, and it's actually based on the work of his father, who's also a doctor. And so his father came to the center, and that's how I got a copy of the book. That's how I heard about it, found it's famous now, but at the time, back then I didn't know. And so I'm type A positive. I'm not supposed to eat any meat at all. And so my whole childhood growing up, I was like just going along with the family programming, but it really wasn't good for me. So once I didn't have that enforced mandate, you must eat meat, it took a while for the momentum of the conditioning to wear off, but eventually my own innate knowledge in my body took over and meat went away from my life. So the same thing happened with the living on prana. I didn't, basically what happened, to make a long story short, since I want to keep this to 7 minutes, one day it suddenly dawned on me that I had not eaten for 10 days. I hadn't even noticed. I just had not eaten for 10 days. And so I've done 10-day fast, and I've done 12-day fast. So, okay, so during that, so this was after I had been an executive director at Rebirth International. While I was there, Leonard had gone on tour and had hooked up with Jazz Maheen, who was also going on tour at the same time, and she gave him a copy of her book, Living on Light, because she devoted like a whole chapter to his teachings on physical immortality in that book. And when he came back from his tour, he gave me a copy of the book, and for some reason I had the idea that it was an old book, like it had been written 10 or 15 years earlier. But actually, now that I look at the timelines, and it was a brand new book, out for maybe a year or two. But I had the feeling like this breatharianism stuff had been around for a long time. But technically, yeah, back in the ancient Sanskrit days, sure, it had been around for a long time. But in terms of modern history, Jazz Maheen's really the one who brought it back into the forefront of public consciousness. So I skimmed through the book. I read the book actually, and I'm like, well, go without eating food or water. That's beyond me. I can't do that, and I'm not sure I want to. All right, so fast forward years later, I've left the center. I'm on my own. Suddenly, I realize I haven't eaten for 10 days and didn't even notice. And then I felt like I had a fever. Not a high fever, but it felt like I had a slight fever. And sure enough, I took my temperature and it was like 99.2. And then I remembered a passage from that book that I had read years before, from the Living on Light book, about etheric, and one of the symptoms of converting to pranic living is an etheric fever. And then then I went and found the book and started looking through it, and I realized that I was having a lot of the indications of converting to pranic feeding. And it just happened spontaneously, just like the vegetarianism just happened spontaneously. It's like as I work on my spiritual path, the physical body evolves to keep up, I guess. But I'm not really looking at it, working on it from that angle. It just sort of happens. So, but eventually, I had a regular job and I had social obligations, and I just didn't want to, commit to this path. So I started eating again. But I would say that ever since then, I eat probably as much in a week as most people eat in a day. So my threshold for how much food I eat was definitely adjusted. And sometimes I feel like I'm just eating out of boredom, or a lot of times you find that when you eat, it's to suppress stuff emotionally. So there's always like a component to eating that is not purely physical. It's not really necessary for survival. So I decided I was not going to do like the official conversion to pranic living until I felt like really called to do it. So at a certain point, I did feel really called to do it. I think in between I did another fast. This one was like 12 days. But at a certain point I felt really called to do it. So I got out the book, studied it, underlined the important parts, made my schedule, arranged my activities to center around it, and started the process. I did the 7-day dry fast, no problem. Then the next week is 7 days of water and diluted juice. So I broke the dry fast by sipping some water, waited a bit, had some more water, waited a bit, had some diluted juice. The diluted juice did not agree with me at all, so I went back to just water. By the 10th day of the 21-day process, which would be the 3rd day of the 2nd week, I wanted to take a shower. And I heard the little voice telling me, don't take a shower now. But I really wanted to take a shower. And I knew the shower, I had put chlorine in the cistern. So I knew the shower was going to smell a little bit like chlorine. But I'm used to that. You take a shower after you put chlorine in the cistern, you get a little bit of chlorine smell. It's not, I don't put a lot, so it's not very strong. I get more, and I swim in chlorinated swimming pools all the time, so way more chlorine. Plus, I'm the one who added the chlorine to the cistern. So I was there with a bottle of 100% chlorine, pouring it into the tank, the cistern, no problems at all. So I didn't really think I was going to have a problem. Let me tell you, I get in the shower, I turn on the hot water, and that chlorine vapor hit me, and I was down on my knees, just immediately collapsed to the floor. And then I started dry heaving. It was like my body was trying to get the chlorine out, but I hadn't eaten or drank anything for 7 days, and then 3 days of only water. There was nothing to, my body was trying to, vomit, but there wasn't anything to vomit. It's kind of like a mucousy dribble came out. So I like cut off the water. I'm climbing out of the shower, or crawling out of the shower, and I hear this voice like, abort mission, drink milk and eat bread to get the chlorine out. And so that's what I did, and I recovered in about a day. And I said to myself, well, I'll give myself a few days to recover from this and do it again. But when I went to do it again, I did not feel the calling. I did not feel like the feeling that I should do this. So I said, well, I'll just wait for the feeling, the calling to come back. And I waited and waited and waited and waited. And I was beginning to think it was never going to come back. But it came back, which is why I'm doing this now. And obviously, this time I'm not going to take a shower in a freshly chlorinated cistern or water from it. And I think when I get to the 2nd week, I'm not even going to bother with the juice. I'm just going to stay with the water. And we'll see what happens. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this or not. I don't know. There are some people, there's like an organization that keeps track of breatharians, and they divide them into levels 1 through 4. Level 4 is like people who never, ever eat or drink anything. There's like 3 people on that list, maybe 5. And they are completely withdrawn from society. They don't have families, they don't interact. That's not the kind of life I want. And I don't know that you have to do that in order to be a level 4, but I do notice that everybody that's a level 4 that never eats or drinks, they're like, hermits. So below that is level 3, and that's people who hardly ever eat or drink. They can go 6-7 months without eating or drinking. Once in a great while, they might have like a glass of water and an apple. Sometimes they might have more than that, but it's always like a special occasion. They make exceptions for like Christmas dinner and family reunions, stuff like that. But otherwise, they're not eating or drinking. That level would also include, I think, or this might be level 2. But anyway, one of the levels, like people that, they might go Monday through Friday without eating anything, maybe drinking some green tea once in a while, and then Saturday they have dinner with their children. So, and there are purists who say that that's not breatharianism, but I think if you're going 6 days a week and you don't need to eat anything and you hardly drink anything, and then you just eat a regular portion on the weekends, I would think that would mean that you must be living on prana on those off days where you're not living on food. So, since I'm already obviously getting a huge percentage of my energetic requirements from prana, it will be interesting to see where I wind up after this process. It may not. It may be that absolutely nothing changes and I'm right where I'm supposed to be. But I don't think I would have gotten the calling. Maybe it took so long to get the calling because I was slowly transitioning to having less and less of a requirement for food and water. So I don't know. So we'll find out. Thanks for watching. Have a great night.